And so that's one thing I've been experimenting with a little bit with all the open space locomotors is like, now I'm going to give you a challenge. Can anybody skip backwards? And then we try it. And then there's a couple kids that can do it. I'm like, show us how to do that. That's really hard. And then can we gallop backwards too? Like, is that something we can do? What about in slow motion? And I've just been like varying a little bit more to go a little bit deeper than just like trying to gallop, see if you can do it.
Hey, what's up, guys? This is Ben Landers, founder of the PESpecialist.com, and you're watching the Phys Ed Q&A show. This is a place where we're going to just have some conversations around common questions related to physical education and try to help make your day a little bit more awesome. I hope you enjoy it, and just want to remind you, show note links will be down in the description of the video. And if you would rather listen to the video's in audio form, we do have a podcast, which you can check out for all you podcasters. Just search for the Phys Ed Q&A show. Let's get into the show, and I hope you really enjoy it.
What's up, friends? It is Coach Nellens, Coach Landers. We are back at it with part 3 of teaching during COVID. Hopefully you got to catch the part 1 and part 2. If you didn't, head to the show notes page at thepespecialist.com/podcast. And I got to say, I'm thankful for this podcast. This is the longest I got to hang out with you, Marcus,
in like
man. 3 months.
Feels great, man.
Chatting it up for like 2 hours.
Yeah, feels awesome.
Yeah, so just a quick review. Part 1, we kind of covered just the overview of our feelings management procedures, the kind of mindset that we went through coming back to school in August. Last episode of part 2, we covered virtual teaching ideas, and those would also still be good ideas for if you're in a classroom. So either virtual or in a classroom. And then in this episode, we're going to cover for our hybrid folks, the people that are starting to get back into school, which is the situation we're in. As we mentioned on the last episode, we're about to be at a 4-day week schedule. In the next 2 weeks, we're transitioning now from a 2-day week schedule. Half the school comes Monday, Tuesday. The other half comes Thursday, Friday. Over the next 2 weeks, we're transitioning to a 4-day schedule. So the whole school, unless they selected the virtual option, will be back at school 4-day a week schedule. And we didn't actually mention this in the other episodes, but our school has designated virtual teachers for kids that select 5-day a week virtual. So like if you chose not to come to school at all and you chose virtual instruction, you have a separate PE teacher from whatever school you were zoned for. They have like specifically virtual PE teachers.
The whole virtual academy.
Yeah, it's complicated.
School.
And it might change because there's a lot of kids that now we're back 4-day a week are not having to do daycare anymore. So they might actually send their kids back to school. We lost some kids to, charter schools and private schools that were doing 5-day a week. So I think some of those are going to start coming back. But of course we'll have to wait and see what happens. Who knows? It's 2020. Who knows what's going to happen? Yeah. So in the last episode, Marcus kind of gave a preview of your some of your no equipment ideas. Do you want to just do a recap of that rock paper scissors game that you were saying you played? Face to face game.
Yeah. So what I do is just a quick recap. When we come back in the gym on Thursday and Friday, if you haven't seen part 1 or part 2 where I explain my schedule to you, or heard part 1 and part 2, is that I teach virtually on Monday and Tuesday with our students in cohort A, and then I have a distance learning activity form, and then I see those same students on Thursday and Friday. So I've built a rapport and a contingency with those kids throughout the week. So on Thursday, when I see them, or that first day I see them face-to-face, we just do a rules review of what we do in face-to-face. We talk about walking and jogging, where students are warm-up, our instant activity, and then we get into the emergency procedures, and then we finish up with some non-locomotor movement by playing ship tag or shipwreck or something like that, whatever you want to call it, where it's just a basic call and response and students stay at their dots spaced out. We do different things like swab the deck and all that kind of stuff like that. And I can share some links to that on there, but it's basically that they can exercise and move in a non-locomotor way. So they're not moving around the room. They just exercise and moving in that space with no equipment.
For people that might not know, like what are the commands that you use and what do the kids do?
Yeah, of course. So if I say storm, then the kids will turn one direction and they'll jog in place. Or if I say shipwreck, they're going to turn the other way and jog in place. If I say lighthouse, they're going to pretend like they're a lighthouse. They're going to be moving around in a circle. So basically, they are people on my ship. I'm the captain. I am giving them commands. They are listening to those commands. And so there's lots of different ways you can do, like swab the deck. You're sitting in the crab position and your bottom is cleaning the deck. There's lots of different things that you can do. You can create your own thing. You don't necessarily have to do the captain in the ship thing. You can make a follow the leader type thing, anything you want to do. So basically we just talk about, hey, we're going to move, but we're not going anywhere. So that's non-locomotor. So that's what we do on the first day. Second day, we come back, we review, do our instant activity, walking and jogging again. And then we do some stretching. And mind is that our kids are all spread out. They're all over. We've got small dots on the ground. They're sitting on those dots. And then after we do that review and stretching and all that, then we talk about, I just drew a blank. It's coming back to me. Oh, here we go. After we do the stretching, then we do a rock, paper, scissors game that we've done on that Tuesday. And on that Tuesday, we did rock, paper, scissors versus Coach Nellums. So they played rock, paper, scissors a virtual session where they played with me, and then whatever, if they won, lost, or tied, they would do an exercise based on that. And so on Friday, when they come back, we'll play that game again, but this time we're face to face. So if you want to, you can build a progression where you play a couple of rounds with them, just like they were doing on the computer. But I just move right into them playing against each other. So they stay socially distanced, more than 6 feet apart on the dot. Instead of facing Coach Nellums, they turn and face each other. So they'll play rock, paper, scissors against each other. And since you're doing 3 activities where they're win, lose, or tie, they don't have to continue playing. They play one game, and then their exercise is decided off of that. And so I preference this activity based on the fact that, hey, you can do these exercises at home, and all these exercises that we have are working on your muscular endurance and your muscular strength. So we're trying to find ways that you can build your body and make your body strong and not be moving close to each other. So we'll play a couple of rounds of that. And then after that, our last activity that we do is rock, paper, scissors victory lap. And so basically I'll have some cones set up in the middle of my gym, and I use large cones, and that will be their face-off area where they face off against somebody else in their class. When they face off against them, I tell them to stay on the outside of the hoop, and then I also take one step back from the hoop to create even more distance. And so they'll play one game of rock, paper, scissors, and if they win, then they earn the victory lap, and they get to jog, run, walk, whatever you want to do, one lap around the gym, and you earn 1 point. If you don't win, that's okay. You can work on your cardiovascular endurance by doing an exercise. I have them do 5 or 10 jumping jacks, and then they can play against somebody else. So basically, they get a chance to move and exercise and play rock, paper, scissors. They get a chance to win and to lose. So you can talk about good sportsmanship and all that kind of stuff. But they are still spread out, and they're all still exercising. And then we talk about how jogging and running is a locomotor activity where they're running around and moving. So they distinguish between non-locomotor and locomotor movement, which is a power standard that students need to understand as well. So that's basically what we do on my face-to-face interaction with students, because I see them all week long. But then the bad side is I don't see them again for another month. So that's what we do in our first week.
That's good stuff, man. Yeah. So for me, I've had 2 face-to-face lessons with kids at this point. And our first face-to-face lesson was honestly very similar to what I normally do, like in a non-coronavirus situation, which you can check out on the blog. We'll link up a post. I have my whole first day lined up. Just like rules and procedures. We hit all the new things. Like if we're moving, we have to have a mask on. We find our new home-based spots. We practice walking and jogging in a socially distanced environment. Give some space. It's not a race. And we practice the start and stop signal. So I have music playing. I give them the stop signal, which is 1, 2, 3, and all the kids drop to the ground. They say, "Oh," and they freeze their bodies. And then we go back to home base, back and forth throughout the day, hitting the rules and procedures and that kind of thing. With the older kids, I play adventure bingo on that very first week because they can move through everything a lot faster because I've been at my school for so long. Most of the kids already know what to do. So it's just a quick review on those days. We play adventure bingo, and you stay spread out. And honestly, my favorite thing about adventure bingo is not only getting to talk to kids about the purpose of PE, being able to pursue adventures and having the skills you need to pursue adventures, but also teaching kids to introduce themselves, especially this year, is so important. And I have kids practice together saying, "Hey, my name is, what's your name? Nice to meet you." Like just those three things. Like if I can get them to learn those three things,
That's
and
clutch.
nice to meet you too. Also, don't forget that one.
Yeah.
bonus credit. But so if you want to see how to play Adventure Bingo, it's a free download on the site. You can check it out. But we play, masks on. We get a little social distance action. If you find somebody that's done an adventure, you put their initials on the card. You jog a lap around. You're trying to get as many boxes filled up as you can. And then we just talk about it afterwards, like how important it is to learn to meet people and to learn to ask questions about them so you can find out things that you love to do together. And then these are the people you're going to be in class with for the rest of the year. So learning to find those connections and learning to make new friends and find out what you have in common with them is a really important life skill. I always tell them about my 10th grade year of high school. I moved to a brand new school. I didn't know anybody in the whole school, and I had to learn how to meet new people. And I made some of my best friends that year that I still have as my friends today. So, especially if we have any new kids in the class, I always say, Banks doesn't know anybody this year. He's brand new. We gotta learn some things about Banks so we can find out what we have in common. We might like the same movies. We might have the same pet. So teaching kids those skills is really important. I play that the second week with my first and second graders. I haven't played with kindergarten yet, but I think they could do it too. We just have shorter classes with kindergarten, so it's a little bit of a different animal, the 25-minute block.
Yeah.
But first and second grade does really well with it. We're just learning to introduce ourselves to each other, to talk to each other, make some connections with each other, and getting, it's a low equipment game. All you need is a marker and a piece of paper. You don't have to touch each other. And when you're done, you spray all the markers down and you trash the paper, hand sanitizer on the way out of the gym. So it's worked well. It's a good game to play, like with social distancing guidelines. There's lots of good rock, paper, scissors variations, like Marcus was saying. I love the victory lap idea. I said it in the last podcast, but having a flip that idea of like, if you lose, you got to run. And the way Marcus is doing it is giving the kids the opportunity to exercise if they win. So if you win, you get to run. If you win, you get to help your body become stronger. So I love that, the way you flipped that. And I think that's a really good point for people to do for any activity. There's a great idea from one of my friends, Coach Pat. He's got his own podcast as well, which you should check out. But I'll link it up, or Mark's will link it up in the show notes. And he did something called the Social Distancing Olympics. So like, this is if you're not allowed to use any equipment. And he's got a bunch of ideas, like a shot put with your shoe. So he had like his kids all competed in like these Olympics, and they all see how far they could do a shot put with their shoe. And he's got, like the 100-yard dash and all the kind of stuff that you can do, the long jump with no equipment. So I thought those were some great ideas. Luckily for us, we are allowed to use equipment. So I did not do a social distancing Olympics, but if the rules change, I always have it on the back burner, 100%. Another good one is the Crazy Cards Challenge. So that's a fun icebreaker that I've got a YouTube video about, but I've done that one, and I took out I think there was probably like 6 or 7 cards where it was like you had to touch somebody or put your hands on somebody, like play a game of leapfrog or give somebody a fist bump. And you can definitely say like, hey, we're not doing fist bumps this year. We're doing air bumps. We're not doing high fives. We're doing air fives, air hugs. If you want to. I just took those cards out, so we had like 40 cards instead of 50. But it's just a fun, quick, instant activity icebreaker you can do. Just spray some sanitizer, shake up the cards, clean them off between rounds. I have like 3 sets of cards. And another good thing to check out for no equipment ideas is Open Phys Ed has some ideas. I haven't used any of their stuff just because we already had enough for us to keep rolling, and we're allowed to use equipment. So I'm
allowed to use equipment.
I'm not going to be planning no equipment games as much. Although for K2, the only equipment we've used is a marker. Like we're doing a lot of open space, practicing locomotors, call it macaroni. Check that out on the channel. Chicken dance. all those locomotor practice follow along, listen and move.
Listen and move, Greg and Steve. Yeah.
Yeah. Are you doing the rock, paper, scissors games with K2 as well? Or are you doing something different?
With kindergarten and first, I do, well, with first grade, they still do the same rules and reviews and stuff like that. But then they do the rock, paper, scissors versus Coach Downs, but they do it with the partner face to face. And then then that's a great distinction between non-locomotor and locomotor. Because after we do rock, paper, scissors, then we get into the locomotor. So I just go through our locomotors, and we've talked about this before. We go through our locomotors, walking, jogging, jumping, hopping, skipping, sliding, giving them a chance to practice that. And then that first day, I do listen and move. And then I just change, some of the ones that he does until the ones that we need to do. But yeah, that's with first grade. And then with kindergarten, we do our first day with kindergarten, taking the tour around the gym, practicing walking and jogging on that Thursday, making sure my kindergarten students don't take their mask off because they don't know how to distance from each other. They run into each other all the time. So they don't know any different. They've never been in the gym without a mask on. So it's not a big transition for them. They know they're just used to being in the mask all the time anyway. So it's good to just go ahead and get them started with a mask on. And then eventually, once they get used to school procedures and stuff, then I might talk about ways that they can take their mask off. But when they're walking and jogging, they have their mask on. So we do the walking and jogging. We do that just to give you a heads up with our progression. I do the walking lines and then jogging lines. The first time with the kindergartners, they stop the music and they freeze. And then we practice that a couple of times where they move and then they freeze when the music stops, just to get them trained to freeze when the music stops. And then we do our 1, 2, 3 signal when we stop the music. I teach them the 1, 2, 3 signal, and then they do the walking and jogging, and then they do the 1, 2, 3. So anytime they hear a teacher say 1, 2, 3, they drop down to their knee and say, huh, just in case you haven't heard us talk about that before.
Stop, drop, and listen.
But yeah, we do that. And then I have poly spots or dots spread out from the earlier classes that we've sanitized before. And then I just, pedagogy, I teach, you practice, all that kind of stuff. They walk and sit by a dot. And then we get into Wilby's fitness book, and I'll link that up in the show notes. So we'll do Healthy Heart first. And what we've done is screencastify us reading each page, because the book is so small and the kids are so spread out that we screencastified us reading that, and I'll share a link in that so that you can see.
So you do that to blow it up on the TV?
Blow it up on the TV. And so we record that, and then we record them listening to me read the book. And you know how kids are, or anything that's on the screen, they just stare at it. And that really helps out. And that really helps out with kindergartners. And then we just do the exercises that Wilby does to keep his heart strong. So I ask him, hey, what's some things that Wilby do to keep his heart strong? And then they'll say, oh, he walked to the park, or he danced, or he does swim to keep his body fit and trim. So, and then we just practice those in our individual space. And then I tell them that's a non-locomotor. And then we go over and we talk about the train and how the train moves from one place to the next, and, stuff like that. Yeah. And then we get into the locomotors, and that usually takes up most of our time. But yeah, that's what we do.
I want to plug real quick. If you guys haven't seen the kindergarten podcast that we did,
check out
the locomotors podcast. Those are both really, really helpful with kindergarten, first grade right now, because we in depth covered tips and tricks for kindergarten, and also a lot of non-locomotor activities in those. So maybe Marcus can link those up as well in the show notes.
I will definitely, for sure. But yeah, that's usually what we get into with day 1 and day 2, getting into those locomotors with kindergarten and first grade, because they're going to need those, and especially with ours, because those first graders are basically kindergartners as far as PE goes, because they missed the end of the school year last year, and so they're still. They didn't do a locomotor license, which we talk about in the podcast, and it's on the show notes and all that kind of stuff. So it really helps. And it really helps to reinforce that social distancing as well. And you don't have any equipment, and they get to move and exercise without any equipment. But yeah, if I'm in a smaller space, I may have half of the kids doing the activity while the other kids are watching. do it only for about 30 seconds or a minute, and then switch out people on there if I'm in a smaller space to do something like that. So I can still practice the locomotors. I just won't be able to practice it with a whole group.
Right.
And that's a great way for them to watch and see kids doing activities as well.
One thing that I've done a little bit this year, because I've only pretty much we did play Adventure Bingo, but for the most part, I've just been working on open space with my K2 kids, working on finding open space, practicing different locomotors, and just every time I stop them, I say, "Oh, Abby, I am so happy you found that open space. Josiah, make sure you're inside the lines over here, please."
Yes.
You know, like giving that feedback in between every time. And then slowly I'm like, dude, you guys all found open space. Give yourself a thumbs up. This is awesome.
Yeah.
And me and Marcus went to this conference. It was like a one-day PD thing, and we went to a session. Shout out to Dr. Ring. You probably won't ever listen to this, but one of the most amazing physical education advocacy professors from University of South Carolina. She's done so much for the profession. But she was presenting a session that talked about breaking down skills to go super deep. And so that's one thing I've been experimenting with a little bit with all the open space locomotors is like, now I'm going to give you a challenge. Can anybody skip backwards? And then we try it. And then there's a couple kids that can do it. I'm like, show us how to do that. That's really hard. And then can we gallop backwards too? Like, is that something we can do? What about in slow motion? And I've just been like varying a little bit more to go a little bit deeper than just like trying to gallop, you know, see if you can do it. Yeah. And of course, like some kids don't even know how to skip yet. So you got to have that, hey, do your best.
Basic. Yeah.
That's how we learn. We practice together.
Yeah.
But I could spend like 50 minutes just doing open space movements, practicing those locomotors. You can give so many refinements. You can let kids show off their skills. And then you can do some follow leaders like call it macaroni or chicken dance. So those are some ideas for those younger kids. Adventure Bingo is another great activity with basically no equipment. But we are luckily allowed to use equipment, which we were not allowed to until like the week before school started. So depending on your situation, things change very quickly. We are only allowed to use equipment within that class. And then like Marcus said, we have to sanitize it before the next class comes in. So kids come in, they put hand sanitizer on, they mask up, and then we sanitize all equipment afterwards. So you kind of, the only limiting factor really for planning PE with those guidelines is how much equipment can you use and then quickly sanitize in about 5 minutes between classes before your next class comes. And then you probably will need 2 sets of equipment because one of them is going to be drying. You use the other set, go out, sanitize that, pull the other set in. So I have a little cart with like a bucket and some places to hang hula hoops and jump ropes. And the only thing I've used so far this year is markers and 4 square balls, because with 3rd through 5th, I started 4 square. That's the first unit that we're doing. You can check out the links for that. But the first lesson that I taught of 4 square this year was the best feeling because it felt like a normal year. I was like, dude, I feel like I'm teaching again. This is awesome, you know, because it's great. Like a naturally social distance activity. I didn't have to like tell kids to spread out. You're already spread out in the 4 squares. You're playing the game, you're rotating around, and it's a great game to start with because the kids have a playground ball in their recess bag. They can play 4 square we have a 4 square court at school. They can draw it on the bus loop. They can, wherever they're at, they can take some chalk, draw out a 4 square court. And I wanted to get all the kids on the same page with the rules and everything. So we're doing that for the first 2 weeks with my 3rd through 5th. We're just working on 4 square, learning the game, playing, learning different rules, learning different ways to play. And you can check out the blog post on how I teach 4 square to get some more ideas on that.
Yeah. I think if you can get a chance to use equipment, having that, especially if you're trying to advocate for your program, if you can put that in there, it's like, hey, I'm only using equipment with this class. This class is only sharing equipment within people that's in their class because they're around each other all day long anyway. So if they're in your class, they should be able to use that equipment. So that's a great advocacy point if you want to try to use equipment in your room, saying, hey, these kids are going to be around each other all day. After this class leaves, I'm sanitizing this equipment, or I'm using a whole nother set of equipment. So that's your way that you can try to get a chance to use equipment. And like Ben said, having multiple of what you're teaching, of what you're doing, multiple playground balls, multiple dots and stuff like that. having that is a great way for you to make sure that you can use some of that equipment as well.
Yeah. I mean, you're going to have to modify some things. Like
Yeah.
for a normal 4 square lesson, I would give every kid a ball and we would practice serving to the wall for like 5 minutes just to get that skill down. But unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to sanitize, 25 playground balls between every class. So
Yeah.
I've just jumped straight into the game and we've just practiced together. So like for a class of 20 kids, I'll have 4 or 5 courts going with 4 or 5 kids at each court, and we're just using 4 or 5 playground balls. So that's a much more manageable thing. Now I'm definitely considering doing jump rope because I've seen a lot of people online doing it, and B, how easy is it to give every kid a jump rope, have them hang it up, spray it down in between classes, and then you have another 25 ropes for the next class that comes in. Yeah. There's so much you can do with a jump rope. So that's another unit I'm definitely considering doing. If you're outside, I would say Frisbee, man. Frisbee is, perfect unit for teaching outside. And you can play ultimate. You can do so many different games. You can play some Frisbee golf. And they're plastic, so you can spray them down. It's not going to mess up the Frisbees. So that's one thing, is like just considering what kind of equipment you can use. You're not going to probably spray down a foam ball, so like I can't really do my normal paddle skills unit where we use those foam tennis balls, because I'm not going to like spray my foam tennis balls with disinfectant,
Yeah.
But yeah, do you have some other ideas on like stuff you've thought about for future
units?
Yeah,
I'm just on the thought process of different things as far as, I think that eventually we have to try some throwing and catching. But in that aspect, I think you probably are going to eliminate some of the activities that we normally do, but you can still work on the throwing. We do a throw and go where students have a ball in their hand and they're working on the fundamental aspects of throwing as far as your underhand throwing and your overhand throwing. And instead of them going to grab a new piece of equipment or something like that, they're grabbing the same equipment and they're working on that. And you can have stations set up. So instead of them getting a new piece of equipment at each station, they can do different throwing activities. They just keep their ball with them the whole time. And then they just talk about transitioning from one place to the next, and you just keep the same ball. And then at the end, you just sanitize that class ball, and then you get a new hand-sized ball that they could use. So throwing, and, trying to figure out some new activities. You're just going to have to remix a lot of the stuff that you do, and it may have to be at the basic level that you're doing it, and you just have to find intertrast variations with the basic levels that you're doing as far as that goes. But
for throwing and catching, I was thinking about, we got like a trash can full of wiffle balls, and those are so easy to spray down, so I was thinking like you could just have some toss and catch challenges for a whole class, like 5 minutes, toss and catch on your dot, 5 minutes, bounce off the ground, catch with your left hand, catch with your right hand, hit the wall, toss with the partner, see if you can score a basketball goal. So like just figuring out what equipment you can use and then creating challenges and tasks around that.
Level gamifying everything with that.
Yeah. And like being okay, like we talked about this in the first part one, but being okay with the fact you have to give yourself grace, and like every kid's not gonna have a ball this year, probably, because you probably can't manage that amount of equipment sanitation. And that's maybe your mindset. If you're like me and Marcus, that's kind of viewed as like not quality PE, because you might have some kids that are waiting in line, or not everybody's touching the ball as much. And it's a pandemic. Like we got to have a little bit of grace for ourselves and do our best this year. And like maybe I'll play a game of kickball, which I've never done in my whole career teaching, because there's only one ball and everybody's not touching the ball. Yeah. That's a useful skill for recess. Like they can learn to play the game, and then they can play out at recess. I used to play kickball when I was in elementary school all the time. So I think just being creative and giving yourself grace is a really important thing right now, and realizing that you're not always going to be able to do the things that you have done. Soccer is another one I was definitely thinking about, because I haven't gotten this approved yet, but like if we don't touch the ball with our hands, maybe we don't have to sanitize between classes. It's like if you touch the ball with your hands, go hit that hand sanitizer. That's a handball. Like, hey, we're just using our feet. Like same thing we're doing when we're stomping on the ground all over the school. Soccer is something that you can have some sense of normalcy with, as far as the unit progresses and doing a whole unit on it, because
You're not allowed to touch the ball with your hand. So, but yeah, you will have to do some prep before students come, because we usually hand the ball to students and they carry it to a spot. So you'll have to do some pre-prep, some prerequisite type work with that as well. But yeah, you can definitely get into a lot of refinement and development with students as far as soccer goes. And but yeah, you like give yourself some empathy and be willing to try something new. And if you're listening this deep into a podcast, you are more than willing to find ideas from other people. So I would suggest, reaching out and being a sponge and trying to find different things that other people are doing, and taking what they do and adapting it to your situation. Just be willing to try some different things, and be willing to fail. Like, you be willing to, hey, I'm going to try this, and it might not work with this class, and then be willing to adjust and do some different things like that.
Yeah.
But yeah,
100%, man. Yeah, we'll put links in the notes for all the different ideas that we have for like using equipment and different modifications that you can do. And I think like the last thing I want to say is just remember that it's all about the kids. And like, that's why we're teachers. Nobody is a teacher for the money. You're teachers because you want to make a difference. And so like, it took me like a week to get over the fear of like my kindergarten kids like coming to give me a hug. And like now I'm like, dude, if that's the only hug they're going to get that day, like I got a mask on, like I'm going to give my kids a hug and use some hand sanitizer afterwards. And I've had to like make that shift, especially with just the way that our culture and the media and everybody is like on high alert, super anxious, like, you know what I mean? And it's definitely a weird year, but I think it always comes back to, I always try to center myself around what's best for kids and like make this a good experience for the kids, because the kids are dealing with the craziest year they've ever dealt with too. Like I can tell you from experience with my kids, they 4-year-olds are wearing masks every day to school. Like that's not normal.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
I don't know. Any last thoughts, man, before we?
Yeah, being student centered and empathy, and give yourself some grace, and just one last thing, for sure is just making sure you're taking care of yourself. You got a lot of stuff going on. There's a lot of overwhelming stuff. Be willing to take breaks, getting some rest, exercising, eating right. We cannot stress that enough. Finding some relaxation techniques, going to sleep, going to bed, and staying off of social media, and doing those things to recoup and relax. It will help you in those stressful times when the internet's not working and the kids are all over the place and the camera's not on. Being able to draw back to those places where you can calm yourself down and keep everything simple will help you keep everything student centered, because it can be stressful. It can be stressful. So I would encourage you to, be curious and not judgmental, because a lot of people are going through a lot of things right now. So to be able to have some support and be able to provide stuff for your students is amazing. And if you're listening to this deep, I mean that you're doing a great job. So
keep up the good work.
Keep up the good work. So
yeah, dude, it's funny you said that. Like I was just talking to Lauren, that's my wife for those listening, about like in the summer, I'm always like, man, I'm going to like get into like such a solid workout routine and like get so fit. And then it's always like more family time, more relaxation, working a little bit less, but then dude, when school hit, like if I don't get my workouts, like that's my like holy grail of my week that I have to hit to be able to function. Like my brain, I was telling her like the amount of stress I'm under, like I know if I don't get that run, my brain will not work correctly. Like I can feel the difference after I take care of myself in that way, like you said, or like get my sleep. Like I gotta have the sleep, So definitely glad you said that. Make sure you're taking care of yourself, friends. Self-care first. Put that oxygen mask on yourself. And with that said, I got some bad news, friends. It is time for us to close out our time together.
No, not again.
Hey, thank you guys so much for listening. I hope something in this brought you value. And if it did, please share it out with somebody else that's a teacher that might benefit from it. And Marcus, great to talk to you, man.
Always, man.
Even on the computer, always good.
Even on the computer, man. Rate and review. Share this with everybody, man.
Yeah, friends. Show notes at thepspecialist.com/podcasts. Coach Nellums and Coach Landers are out. Have fun and teach on. Hope you guys have a great day.
See ya.
Thanks for watching, guys. That's it for this episode of the Phys Ed Q&A show. Hope you enjoyed it. If you did, make sure you hit that like, make sure you hit that subscribe, and don't forget to share with somebody that you think might benefit from the conversation. Just a reminder that we'll have all the show notes linked below in the video description, and if you would rather listen to the audio version, we do have a podcast, which is in iTunes. You can search that on your favorite podcast player app, and be sure to subscribe. Hope you guys have an awesome day. As always, have fun and teach on, and we'll see you next time. What's up, guys? Thanks for watching the video. I wanted to let you know this video is sponsored by the PE Specialist membership community, where teachers have access to great tools like unit plan samples, station signs, trainings, tutorials, and even community forums. If you think the membership might be a good fit for you, you can head over to the peteacher.com/info for some more information. Hope you guys have an awesome day.